Murray. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Maria. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
We're dealing with some tech issues, so hopefully this goes smoothly today. But hey, hello 2020, right?
Exactly.
So this is going to be a super cool interview. I can't wait for people to hear about your work. Those who know me and my work know that I essentially lovingly and compassionately shove meditation down people's throats. Like, you have to do it. But
For their own good. Their own
yes,
good.
yes, and for the good of the world. So anyway, so obviously we're talking a little bit about meditation, but your unique work is absolutely fascinating. I can't wait for people to hear about it. Can you tell us though, briefly, just give us sort of a mini bio, like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a composer and musician, and I started playing music when I was about 5 years old. So music has been a deep part of my life forever. And then I got into the technology world as an entrepreneur. So I kind of now blend all those skills together into what I do now, which is I created this experience called MindTravel, which is an immersive musical journey that I take people on at the piano. And we typically, in kind of non-COVID times, we typically do it in gorgeous outdoor settings and theaters like Central Park and Santa Monica Beach, and beautiful theaters, all around. And now we're doing it virtually. But essentially, it's this musical journey that really provides a beautiful space for healing, and also kind of opening up creativity and imagination, so that we can really be moved to purpose through the music. That's really the core idea of the experience.
Yeah, actually, when I read through your website, I'm thinking this is so much more than mindfulness. There's a depth to this work that is, yes, I just want to read all the things and listen to all the things.
Yeah. And when we think about meditation, for those that have any kind of meditation practice, right? I think we do that because we feel the benefits of it. And for those who don't have a meditation practice, I find that the music really can kind of create that space for all the benefits that are available for meditation without me even having to call it meditation. So it's a very accessible practice, if you will, what we do with the music, with mind travel. I mean, one of the core benefits of any kind of meditation experience is about really allowing people to connect deeply with the present moment. And what's the benefit of that? Well, the benefit of that is by connecting with the present moment, by bringing our attention to the present moment, there's a real intimacy that gets developed. And so, with our attention right here, right now, we're able to go deeper, whether it's with our own thoughts, our own reflections, or with the person we're with, right? If we're really present right now with the person that we're speaking with, then we have a deeper intimacy and connection with them. And I think that's something we're all looking for, is being
Absolutely.
able to go deeper in connection and be more intimate with our partners, our friends, our family, our kids, our parents, or whoever it is, and ultimately with ourself and our experience in the
Mhm.
world. And music really can bring us right into, as this kind of holding that soundtrack, if you will, to the film, the movie that is right now the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't wait. We're going to get into that a little bit more within the context of my specific niche is fertility issues. So I'm going to ask,
Right.
obviously you're not a fertility specialist, but I want to ask around the fertility stuff and how it's connected. But I really would love for folks to know your history and how you came to do this work, because I think that my listeners and watchers can absolutely relate, and they can look up your TED Talk and watch your whole talk on it. But
Right.
I would love to hear from you what was um, the beginning of this work for you? What was the
Yeah.
drive?
For so many years, what I do now publicly with Mind Travel, right, taking people on these musical journeys at the piano, it was always a personal practice for me. Is what I did kind of alone at home on my own, to just manage my own state, to just deal with whatever was occurring in my life at the time. If it was in the technology business world, it was just managing day in and day out stresses, the fires you got to put out, just dealing with all of that kind of anxiety and worry about, running a company or working at a company, and just the ups and downs of life. And inevitably, all of us along that journey of life, that kind of winding river of life, there's going to be something that happens that really will arrest us, will stop us in our tracks, because of the tragic nature of it, the difficulty of it, grief in particular. It could also be other types of grief, that we go through, just really difficult moments. But in my case, it was a profound grief, with the sudden and tragic death of my sister in an unexpected accident, and we were actually together during that time. So not only did I have the loss of my sister, but also the kind of trauma around what I experienced, what I saw, and what I went through, being right there next to her. So that was a lot to unpack and a lot to get through. And ultimately, I turned to music, to this music, that we're talking about here with MindTravel. MindTravel didn't have a name to it. It was just what I did, for myself. But I turned to the tool I knew, to music, to feel my way through that difficult time. As you can imagine, I mean, the sadness, the depression around, that event, the shock of it, the guilt around it. I mean, it was just so many layers and levels to unpack, and work through. And, so much so that there were times where I just didn't even want to get up in the morning, and, I just wanted to stay in bed. And there was just no motivation to move forward in life. And I think on some level we can all relate to that in our own way, in our own time, with our own details. But that's part of the common human experience, that, we all go through something like that on our journey. And what do we do when we encounter that? We have really a couple of main life choices. One is to retreat from it and to bury it. The other is to confront it and move through it. Those are really the two kind of meta choices that we have. Having those around us that love and support us is part of that being able to move through it. I was lucky enough to have that. But then it's also in our daily kind of practice. What are we doing to move through it? And we must have the self-motivation, to do that. Otherwise, it's too easy to retreat, to turn to unhealthy habits, to turn to addictions, to turn to alcohol, drugs, TV, sex. I mean, you name it, we can distract ourselves from it, even our work, right?
Yes.
And many people will tell you, oh, keep yourself busy, stay strong, and time will heal. And that's, really has not served so many people. It's some of the worst advice that anybody can give, however well intentioned. It really is about, confronting it, addressing it, feeling the pain of it, and working through it to come through the other side. There's just no skirting that kind of experience. So that's what I did, and music provides such a wonderful vehicle to do that, because music as a language is the language of emotion at its nature. And sometimes with these kind of situations, if someone were to ask you, how are you feeling? I mean, you just would have no words for it, right? I mean,
Right.
it's the kind of feeling that is, it's deeply, first of all, it's deeply embodied. So it's not
Yes.
even intellectual. So you're asking someone to express with words, which is an intellectual, enterprise,
Right.
to express things that are so deeply embodied. It's very challenging, and we just don't have the words. And we even say, when we don't have the words for something, we turn to music. Music is a multi-dimensional language. It has many layers to it. It's not just a linear language like spoken language, but it also is a vertical language, right? It's got this layers that create harmonies, which, when they conspire together, are able to express the tangle of emotions. We very rarely feel one emotion at a time. There could be a dominant emotion, but there's typically a lot of intertwining dynamic, nature to our emotional state. And so music can actually do a good job at expressing um, that sophisticated emotional tangle,
Hmm.
and allow us to untangle it slowly as we kind of feel our way through it. And it's the feeling through it that allows for the healing. And that's really, I think, it was at the core of my own experience. And it was when I experienced that, on the other side of that, profound pain, on the other side of that horizon, which I couldn't see past for a very good period of time. There was a tremendous fog on the horizon, unclear what lay on the other side of it. But the music allowed me to kind of part the fog and see through and work through that and transmute that pain into its pure love, which ultimately sits at the core of any grief. Right? We're grieving so profoundly, so in such a difficult way, because on that level we feel so much love for the person or for the situation that is no longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, or the expectations, or there's just so much love vested. And now that that's dissolved, or seemingly has dissolved, right? It's commensurate. The pain is commensurate with the amount of love. But instead of kind of realizing it's gone, no, we transmute the grief, filtering it down to its essence of love, so it continues. And for me, I found a way to continue that love for my sister into my everyday, which for me primarily is my music. So when I sit at the piano, every time I sit there, I'm expressing that love through the music, and then
Mm-hmm.
communicating that to others and for myself. So that's where this all started. When I saw the power of that, I felt compelled and really called to share this with others, because if it could help anybody, then how wonderful would that be? And it was only at that point that I actually came up with a formal name for it, and started to share it officially.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I'm moved. I just feel that this is there's so much depth to what you're talking about, and you're right, it is a shared experience. Oftentimes people in the fertility world feel quite isolated, and like no one
Yeah.
understands fertility issues are quite chronic. So imagine having lost your sister over and over and over and over again,
Right.
sometimes for years. And
Yeah.
um, I love how you talk about um, really transmuting or transforming this deep loss and pain into the essence of love. And that is absolutely what I experienced too when I began to meditate. I came to meditation through complete bitterness, though. I was like, nothing else has worked. Let me try this. And it's stupid. so, so you
That's
have a
a
much
that's a
more.
good that's a good New Yorker attitude. I feel like I would have that.
Yes, yes, yeah. I was living in New
Totally
Jersey.
cynical. I tried everything else. All right, why not?
Forget about it. This is stupid. Yeah. So you have a much lovelier story around it, but to the same end, right? There's one part that of your work that I found absolutely essential for listeners of my work to really
Mhm.
hone in on, or home in on, and that is this word travel. So mind travel. What
Yeah,
the tagline you use is stillness through movement.
yeah,
And I find that one of the big struggles for people who are in this fertility world is that there's constant movement. Okay, if this didn't work, then I have to do this, and then this, and then this, and then
right,
this. And there's no creation of stillness. And I'm wondering if this concept of stillness through movement could be so much more beneficial than just stopping completely. So, can you
right.
speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I really use nature and the universe as the model. And if you just look at the nature of the universe, um, she is change. The whole universe is change. The very nature of the universe is constant change. Even when things seem perfectly still out there, right? We look at the stars, we look at the constellations, it seems so peaceful and quiet out there in outer space. But we know it's anything but that, right? Truly, once you study any astronomy, astrophysics, you know that space and the expanse of the universe, first of all, it's moving and expanding and inflating at the speeds of light and beyond. So there's incredible movement in the galaxies just flying through space. You have particles, and you have all kinds frequencies moving through space. You have stars and all kinds of fusion happening, exploding, black holes merging, creating gravitational waves, undulating the actual fabric of space and time. So there's massive movement, violent movement even out in the calmness, right? The seeming calmness of space, and everything around us here, even an innocent walk in the park or on the beach, right? It seems peaceful, but there's quite a lot of movement around us, right? The waves are crashing, and the wind. Think about the trillions of air molecules around you, moving furiously. The leaves on the trees, the grasses. There's just so much movement inherent in life, and I think sometimes we make the false notion that we need everything around us to be perfectly still to feel stillness, that we need everything around us to be tranquil to feel tranquility, right? And I think that's a false notion. It's about how can we find that stillness amongst all the movement around us, right? And this is, the metaphor of the eye of the storm. Another wonderful metaphor I like to use is if you think about a hurricane, up, over the ocean. The waves could be 30, 50, 60 feet high. The winds are up to 200 miles an hour. So this fierce movement, violent movement, rough seas above. But if you were to go just beneath the surface of the ocean, 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, I mean, you don't even have to go much more than that. It's perfectly calm and still in the waters just beneath the surface, even with a hurricane happening above. So, that's what I try to tap into when things seem to be swirling around me like a hurricane, where I have no control over the events around me. And I feel like I'm being like a little sailboat being tossed in the waves to the left and to the right. Even in that moment, I know that if I go deep beneath the surface, not even that far, I can find that stillness while the hurricane's happening. I don't have to wait for the hurricane to subside. And we all have that. Going deep into the ocean means going into ourselves, right? Well, what does that mean? You can't actually go in yourself. If somebody doesn't have a meditation practice, they're like, what are you talking about? It's basically using something to bring your awareness to your inner experience. And music can do that profoundly. Breathing can do that. The two together can be very powerful. And so you're bringing your awareness just to this present moment, and so that it's not being pulled into future worry and anxiety, right? That's essentially what anxiety is. It's taking a fear you might have and projecting it out into the future, right? And the brain is very good at, trying to create all kinds of scenarios, in a sense, to help us prepare. But of course, our brains have incredible imaginations, and we tend to go to the worst case scenario very quickly. And the worst case scenario is not the most probable scenario most of the times. And but we don't have access to that so readily when we're going through it. But by allowing ourselves to come back to the present moment through this practice, we can then find that stillness even while we're allowing all the movement to take place. And one of the experiences that we do that very powerfully, and where we exercise that muscle, Maria, is in the walking meditations we do with MindTravel, these silent walks that we do. And there, it's not just about lying or sitting on your meditation cushion. It's about walking out in life, moving through life. And through that process, I guide people into that stillness through movement. And when you access that place, a whole new world opens up of possibility for operating from that place. Because when you choose from that stillness, from that calmness, then so many more options open up to you, which provides more freedom. That's ultimately what we're going for. Is, do you have more or less freedom in your life because of your reactions and behaviors? I think we all want to have more freedom, which means more option to choose direction, not be so reactive that we only can choose what's right here in front of us that is not really what we ultimately want.
Yeah. Yeah, and something you mentioned earlier too, is that a lot of times these trauma, or most of the times these traumas are embodied, right? And sometimes our brain doesn't even have a
That's right.
chance to react before our body has already lived out that scary experience. And
Yeah.
I suspect that creating this stillness through movement addresses the body and the body's memory for this really difficult memory. Um, I
That's
just
absolutely spot on. Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
spot on. Yeah, to think that our bodies and our minds are separate
Hmm.
is a just a false notion. They are completely interwoven in the human experience.
Hmm.
And when we have an emotion, an emotional reaction does not take place only in the brain.
Right.
It's actually felt by the body first.
Oh
It
yeah.
goes through our whole body. And then we generate chemicals, mostly in our brain, but other places too, that then these hormones flood our system in order to allow us to adapt to that emotional state, right? If it's suddenly a very, scary situation, we get a lot of adrenaline flooding in to help us to physically, survive that condition. But there's a lot of other, of course, emotions and hormones and chemicals that are all conspiring and interacting. And emotions are wave-like shapes. So they rise, slowly or quickly. They swell, and then they have a decay to them, just like a note of music.
I
You
was
you
gonna
hit a note at the piano.
say that sounds
It's a
like
beautiful
music.
metaphor.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's exactly music. Emotions are music. That's why when we say that music is the language of emotions, I'm not like kidding around. Like it really is.
No, it's
So
true.
you hit a note, it rises, crests, decays, the next note, and that's how we are, one emotion into the next, sometimes several emotions together, like harmony. And it takes very it takes very deep listening, just like with music, to listen to our condition, to our bodies, to our emotions, to be able to even know what we're feeling, right? Emotional literacy is, I mean, you kind of need a PhD degree to understand what's actually happening with you. Most of us don't even understand what's happening with us all the time. Especially men. We have a much harder time kind of accessing what's happening, with us, and we shut down a lot easier. Women have a much easier time generally, but again, not everyone can easily or instinctually understand everything going on with them. So they go with the dominant emotion, but not clear on some of the other supporting emotional states. And then they all kind of intertwine together. But the more emotional literacy we bring, the more listening we bring to our body and our emotions, we can start to kind of uh, reduce the charge of them. They have so much charge, and then we allow them to decay, and then there's that space, just like there's a little bit of space between every note, right? A
Yes.
little rest between each
We
note,
speak the same
and it's that
language.
space. It's the same exact language. And the great musicians, the great composers from Mozart to Debussy, they've all said that music lies in the space between the notes. And that's where life actually is the important elements of life happen in the spaces between happenings,
Yes.
right? So something happens and you've got some small amount of space to react before the next happening. And through these practices, we can widen that space. Just like on your iPhone, you kind of make that move to
Mhm.
zoom out, zoom in, you know what I'm talking about with your fingers? Imagine doing that with time in your life, where you kind of separate out the spaces between these happenings so that you have more freedom and power to react from that most authentic part of you, not your conditioned reactive part of you.
Yes.
That's the magic. That once you've got that muscle built and honed and really exercised, then life becomes a very different experience where you're not at the whim of everything coming at you.
Yes.
Whether it's the doctor telling you some news, whether it's, the coronavirus, whether it's the political situation, whether it's, someone cutting you off on the highway. That doesn't matter what the situation is. They all have a commonality, which is that they're triggering. And they're going to trigger some conditioning within you, a program that's running within you. And the only way to override the program is to first create some space so that you can insert another choice, another program. And the more you do that, the easier it gets. That muscle really does build, and that's how change occurs. Small steps at a time that build a really hardened, healthy muscle over time.
Oh, I love this. I'm wondering if you can speak. All right, so I happen to be a little bit like, I tend to be a little nerdy. So
Welcome to the club.
I know. I'd love to know about the music specifically.
Yeah.
Like, I think I read somewhere that on these experiences that you run, the music that you compose on the spot. Is that accurate? Did I read that right?
There's a couple of different experiences. When I play live piano, like at the beach or Central Park, I am composing everything in real time.
Wow.
So there are forms of improvisation, and for an hour, 75 minutes, whatever it is, I am just going down the river of life through the music, and just feeling whatever. It's really about getting out of my own way, so that my subconscious, that iceberg of the mind, where only 5-10% is above the surface and accessible to our conscious state, right?
Yeah.
There's 90% that we have no direct awareness of, right?
Okay.
The parts of you that, for instance, are regulating all your body functions and your organs, you don't
Yeah.
have any access to that. You can't suddenly tell your spleen to like do something different, right? I mean, as far as I know,
Great.
but it's still operating, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now, that's also not just happening on a physiological level, but it's also happening on an emotional level, right? A psychological level. There's a lot happening without your direct knowledge and access.
Mhm.
So the more we can get out of our own way in terms of our ego and our conscious state and access those hidden states,
Right.
right? Then we have more freedom and access and intimacy with our own selves. And that's the idea behind the music, is to gain that access.
Okay.
So I try to do that. That's my own practice. I try to kind of set my day to day aside, get into my flow zone through the music, and now I'm kind of dropped into a different kind of brainwave state, if you will, which accesses different parts of the brain. Just like when you're sleeping, your brain waves that you emit when you're sleeping, right? The actual low energy frequencies that are coming out of the brain. The brain is an electrical organ. Let's remember that. There's electricity that actually makes all the neurons fire, right? We're electrical beings. We're actually digital creatures. It's kind of cool. But that electricity creates low wave brain frequencies that emit during our waking state. Like right now, we're engaged. We're moving around in life. That's in the beta range. When we go to sleep, it slows down, and there's a different electrical activity, and that allows for different consciousness states. It's why we dream in REM sleep. We're actually at a different brain wave frequency. Deep sleep, which is even slower than dream sleep, right, is at a slower theta state, theta brain wave frequency state. So those are, those are available to us, and I believe, and I mean, it's not just me that believes it, but it's clear that we can actually access those slower, slowed down brainwave states while we're awake, not
Yes,
sleeping,
you can.
but in kind of a middle state, right? When we meditate, we can access alpha states, which is kind of somewhere between engaged working life and sleeping, kind of unconscious. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So I'll actually use binaural beats and other audio technologies, right, to I infuse them into the music so that it actually helps the brain, kind of coaxes it into these slower brainwave states. And then from there, there's a much easier access to being open, being heartfelt, and being, just in the present moment.
Yes.
And anxiety is lowered, and the thought patterns kind of shift down a notch. That's how we can down regulate and really repair in a very powerful way, physically and emotionally. Now, in when we're doing the walks, obviously when we do them, like I'll walk with 300 people, on the beach or in a park. I can't be doing it at the piano live, but I'll use recordings that I'll then curate from my vast library of recordings from those concerts. And I'll pick one that maybe evokes the ocean if we're walking near the water, right? Maybe one that evokes the mountains for me if we're walking up in the hills. So I will curate them specific to the landscape from the library that I have. So it is kind of it depends on the experience of what's going on. But for instance, the underwater concerts, I don't know if you saw that, but
Yes.
we do these crazy underwater. We've done the largest underwater concerts in the world where I take an Olympic pool. I thought, what could be more immersive than putting the entire audience in the pool? And then I place these underwater speakers. They're waterproof underwater speakers that I've had specially made. And we put over a dozen of them throughout this huge Olympic pool. I mean, massive. It's like a lake. It's huge. And then everybody gets in and has their own spot, kind of like a yoga class. Everyone gets their own little area with kind of pool noodles to keep them floating. And the moment they tip their head back and their ears fall into the water, this acoustic underwater soundscape opens up to them, and sound actually travels better through water as a medium than air.
Did not know
Because it's
that.
more dense, because there's more molecules for it to bounce around. So that's why you can hear, for instance, whale song 600 miles away.
Okay.
Right? That's the reason. It's the physics of mechanical waves traveling through a medium. So air's got some density, but water has more density, so it travels further.
I
Yeah.
did not know that about sound waves.
Yeah, it's like when you put your ear to the train tracks as a kid. I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah.
did that. You can hear it really far away because the steel is actually carrying the vibration many, 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 many miles. Yeah,
That
it's
is
pretty cool.
amazing.
But we take advantage of that in the water, and now you're not only hearing the music, but you're feeling the vibration through your whole body.
You're answering all my questions. I don't
I
have to
mean,
talk. Just
Maria,
continue.
I can't tell you how many pregnant women have come to those events. I mean, they don't give birth there yet. That hasn't happened. I mean, that might happen soon, but I mean, it hasn't happened yet. But I welcome it. But maybe after everyone leaves, I don't know. That could be weird. But some collective birth,
Water births.
water births everywhere. Lane 2, lane 4, lane 3. Oh my God. We do. We have like 8 lifeguards on duty. I mean, for various reasons, but that might be one of them now. But anyway, but we have people who are expecting. They come there because it's so connective. It's so healing. First of all, physically, you're just getting rid of gravity for an hour, hour and a half. I mean, and that. I mean, I think any woman who's carried can appreciate that. That relief from gravity, and just kind of almost becoming fetal like, right? It's really what happens in this underwater concert experience, and the music is going through everybody. I recently had someone who is expecting reach out to me and ask what MindTravel recording would I recommend they listen to during their birth. And there's something really powerful about that, using music as ritual, right? Using music
Yeah.
in a milestone moment like that.
Yeah.
First of all, the music will help relax the body and mind, and I mean that's so critical, during a birth, of course. And then it'll also open up this added dimension of connection and just bring the whole experience together as a ritual. And I think that is all too often forgotten in the hospital setting, where it's just, let's just get the baby out safe. And of course, that's critical, that's important. But bringing some more ritual to it through music, there's more intention, there's more thoughtfulness. I think it could also not only bring more bonding to the mother and baby, but also to the other partner, because it creates this collective experience as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
So I invite invite folks to try that out and see if that works
absolutely.
for them. Yeah.
Also, and I'm thinking, ooh, I wonder if I could partner with Murray because I create meditations, but and I use binaural beat,
Right.
technology, which is where my nerdy self was coming in. I was like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes. Yes.
you
Yes.
answered that nerdy question. You answered that nerdy question. Okay. Um, but folks like to listen to meditation music during like a transfer, for example, when you're transferring
Yeah.
the embryos back to the woman's uterus, during acupuncture sessions, during all kinds of fertility things.
Yeah.
I think that your music could be just really, really healing. Also, I wanted
Yeah.
to speak to this for a second because you mentioned folks floating in this pool, and of course, the sound waves travel to their body too. I recently went to a sound healing, and I've never been to a sound healing before. This was not in the water,
Yeah.
but these Tibetan sound bowls. They
Sure.
use these
Yeah.
big bowls.
Yeah. Sound baths. Yeah.
Is that what it's called? I can't believe.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, my brain was affected, but my body, I can't believe I felt like I had a 90-minute massage.
Right.
I
Right.
felt so good.
Yeah.
And I imagine, so now this is why I'm like, oh my, what is that? What is the frequency? Like, how does that happen? And so you can speak to that. I thank you for mentioning that about the pool, about being in water.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have ideas or you've had people ask you about creating their own mind travel experience because you have these big groups and folks, and obviously now it's online for COVID stuff, but can folks create, or do you recommend they even like create their own mind travel experience even on their own?
Absolutely. I mean, I specifically talk about bringing music into your life as a practice, as ritual. It's what I do. It's what I've always done. It's my daily touch point. And even if it's a weekly touch point or a couple times a month, it just regrounds you, rebalances you, and opens up creativity. So I definitely recommend that. Now, during the COVID era, when it's difficult to do in-person events, I've suspended, I had to suspend my tour and all of that. But now we've transferred, like so many people, doing them virtually. So we'll do virtual concerts from my living room where I get the benefit of playing my Steinway piano, so everybody gets the benefit of that. So it sounds really amazing. It's
Wow.
like you're in my living room through the technology. So we do the virtual concerts, which you just kick back on your sofa on your bed, and away you go. So we're still doing those. We're also doing the walking meditations, but we do them virtually. So what that means is that
Wow.
you have your phone, you put your headphones on, and you go in your neighborhood, in your park, in your beach, wherever you live, wherever you are. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people join at the same time from all over the world. So now just imagine so many people walking together, right, in their own location. Yet we're all connected through the phone, and you're listening. You can actually see me. You can see where I am. I have the music playing. I'm curating the music, and I'm guiding it with spoken word, narrative, poetry to really
Oh,
collectively take us to another place. And
oh my
it's
God.
so powerful, so connective. So I do those weekly now, and again, every time we get people from all over the world. It's just wonderful. And then if you can't make those times, there's also, or you want to do it more frequently, there are the recordings that we did so that people can create their own schedule, their own ritual experience with music, with mind travel, and those are all on the website mind travel, so that you can do a walking experience, you can do all the different experiences, whether you want my voice guiding it or just the music alone. We have all the options there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who are listening and or watching, I'm going to be joining that. So come on,
Come on.
let's do this. This
And by
is,
the way, sleep is another big area
oh,
that
yes.
has really been interrupted. I mean, it's generally a big problem for people.
Mhm.
Such a large portion of this country is just is undersleeping, and it has all kinds of physical and psychological ramifications. And I would say for those that are going through the kind of fertility concerns and the fertility journey that you're helping facilitate. I can only imagine how difficult many nights, can be when
Mhm.
you're just worried about things, taking things happening in certain expectations. So being able to have restful sleep is not just important psychologically, but of course also physically for what you're actually trying to achieve.
Yes.
So I created very specific meditations and music for sleep to
Very
help sleep states. And I invite people to try those out. And there's several different meditation techniques, about 3 of them that I have there, and also the music. So I encourage
beautiful.
people to see if that works for them.
Beautiful. Oh gosh. I just love this. I love all the work that you do. And we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
People, you guys have to check Murray out. All of your information will be on the show notes and accessible to people. So I'm really excited for folks to check you out. Do you have as some final words, any words of hope or wisdom to offer folks who are dealing with trauma and trauma loss and all that stuff that's a shared human experience, but yeah, it's definitely pretty prevalent in the fertility world. So wondering what your
Yeah.
thoughts are.
Absolutely. I can say this from my own experience, and if it connects and relates and resonates with others, that would be wonderful. I mean, for me, it's so easy to feel that you're alone in going through what you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, part of that is our conditioning around it. Part of that, we're just not used to talking about difficult stuff with other people in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We also don't want to burden them. We have all this conditioning around it for whatever reason, and so it makes us feel more isolated and alone in what we're going through. And even if we have a partner in what we're going through, there's still a sense of disconnection from your general life. So the first thing to know is you're not alone. There's always so many people going through just what you're going through. And of course, people going through what you're going through at different times.
Yes.
So first know that you're not alone and that we truly all are connected and that there are people, like you, Maria, and so many others who do want to support and who are ready, willing, and able to support whatever you're going through. And asking for help is not a weakness, is not a burden. And I've come to see it truly as giving someone a gift by asking for their help.
Oh, yes.
Because I can't tell you how many people are so moved by being asked to be helpful. First of all, it makes them feel like you really care for them and love them and want their help. They feel needed. They feel useful. They feel like they can contribute. And it's such a bonding and intimacy building exercise. So asking for help is not a weakness. It's not a vulnerability that means anything about you other than you're truly strong in being able to ask for help, ask for support when you need it. And you're doing others a favor. You're doing others in your life a service because you'll bring them closer to you. And that will forge a deeper bond that will last for decades going forward. It'll
Please send
deepen
this to
your
your male
relationship.
partners. I
It's
think
really true, and I mean, and men might not say it or easily, but it's the same. It's the same. It's the
it
same. Absolutely
is.
true. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Um,
I really
yeah, and
appreciate
then just finally, I would say it's easy to try to just bury stuff and move past it and just tough it out and just move forward. And that kind of grit, we kind of we see that around us and we almost value that in some way, but it doesn't serve us in the long run.
it.
And the only way to heal, and what does it mean to even heal? To heal means to make whole. That's where the word comes from. It means to make something whole that is not currently whole. And if you're going to make something whole, if you're going to heal it, then you must feel it through. That's the core ingredient. That's the core, requirement is to feel it through. And it's challenging because to feel something through means you're going to have to go deeper into the pain potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But it is actually the shortcut.
It
The
is.
shortcut is not to bury it because ultimately it'll just come back in some way,
Right.
physically, emotionally. So
Right.
I do think, and I've worked with so many thousands of people. It's true no matter what the situation. It's a commonality, no matter what you're going through.
Yes.
Obviously, I can't relate to a physiological fertility condition, but
Hmm.
I can relate to, you know, loss and
Yes.
um, expectation and all of that is
Hmm.
deeply built into the DNA of the human experience. So yeah,
Yes. You,
that's what I have to say.
you can relate to deep pain that can only be expressed through music. Ah,
That's right.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and
Thank you
healed through the
so
music.
much.
Absolutely felt
Yeah.
healed.
I
My
really
absolute pleasure.
appreciate your insights, Murray. You're wonderful, and I am excited for folks to go and check out your work and find some deep healing, finding some
Yes, I'll see
wholeness.
you all in the music.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.